You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Folks, the civil rights is a major issue in this country. And last week, the U.S. Conference on Civil Rights actually issued their report detailing how the different federal agencies are faring when it comes to civil rights. It doesn't look good. No shock under Donald Trump and his administration. Joining us right now is Catherine Lehman. She is chair of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Catherine, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Thanks so much for having me, Roland. It's great to be on.
So first and foremost, what did y'all find when it comes to how the Trump administration is dealing with civil rights across all federal agencies?
The commission's majority had very, very serious concern about the status of civil rights enforcement in this country today. What we found in this, following the 2-year investigation about the beginning of the Trump administration and the end of the Obama administration, is that the Trump administration consistently and persistently is asking to undervalue federal civil rights enforcement, seeking to reduce the budgets of our federal civil rights agencies that are engaged in this important function. Happily, bipartisan Congress has routinely rejected those requests and has been increasing funding for civil rights. Even with that increase, what we find is that our federal civil rights agencies do not have sufficient staff, do not have sufficient budgets to meet the volume of need of the kinds of complaints, the kinds of concerns that are coming in to the federal government from Americans across the issues that civil rights touches, and that we continue to need more people and more capacity to be able to do the important work of creating a civil rights safety net for the entire country.
And so you've done this report. What happens now? Who does it go to? Is there some plan for the Trump administration to actually deal with this, or is it simply a report that they can just file away and ignore?
Well, we hope very much that this report does not get filed away and ignored. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights is a bipartisan commission that has existed by statute for 62 years. It is our job to advise the president, the Congress, and the American people about the status of civil rights. And we have influenced all of the major civil rights laws that have been enacted in the 6 decades of our existence. So it is our hope that Congress will take the recommendations that are in the report, conduct appropriate oversight of federal civil rights agencies, afford more and better policies to those agencies to be able to do the important work that they're charged to do, and that Congress will continue to increase funding for the civil rights agencies so that they can do the work that Congress has long charged them to do. What we saw in the evaluation of the 13 agencies that we evaluated is that this administration today does not meet the volume of need and, in fact, understates the serious scope of the harm and asks for fewer people, is dialing back its enforcement promises, is less transparent than the last administration was about the way that it does the work that it does, and is effectively turning away from federal civil rights enforcement. So we have a dramatic and immediate need to change those practices and to course correct now. The Commission has asked Congress to act, and we will be very grateful when Congress is responsive and begins to conduct the kinds of oversight that the Commission calls for, and when we can ensure that the agencies actually fulfill their statutory obligations.
It's no shock that the Trump administration has not been a friend of civil rights. They have rolled back many of the civil rights in the Department of Education, in other areas. What department, out of all the federal agencies, where are we faring the worst when it comes to civil rights protections?
You know, Roland, the sad news is that it's hard to pick one. We evaluated 13 agencies, and there's not a single agency that we can feel enthusiasm about the way that it's doing the work now. Very serious concerns about the Department of Justice, very serious concerns about the Department of Education, very serious concerns about HUD. The concerns range across the board. What we hear is not lack of awareness from the federal officials about the need for the harm. We heard from the Department of Labor's director of the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs that they can only investigate 1% to 2% of the contractors within their jurisdiction. But still, the Trump administration sought a dramatic reduction in staff for that agency. Overall, we've seen 300 federal civil rights investigators leave our agencies in just the time period that we investigated. So we're seeing really stark rollbacks, and I can't tell you, here's the one agency about which we should have the most concern, because frankly, I have very serious concern following this investigation about all of the agencies and about all of the ways that they do their work.
And so, first of all, so what's next? So what happens next?
Well, we will be using all the tools that we have at the Commission's disposal to be able to disseminate this information, to make sure that the American public has the information, to be sure that Congress has it. It's a very long report, as you will have seen. It's more than 500 pages, so it's very detailed in its analysis of what is happening at the agencies. We will be trying to make sure that Congress is fully responsive and that we can course correct so that our agencies actually do have the tools that they need, and they use the tools that they have to be able to make sure that all Americans can live confident that their civil rights will be satisfied.
All right, then, Catherine Lehman with the U.S. Conference on Civil Rights. We certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, I now want to bring in my panel there in Washington, D.C. Joining me is Dr. Avis Jones-Dweever, political analyst. Dr. Cleo Monago, he is a political analyst and behavioral expert. Amisha Cross, political commentator and Democratic strategist. I want to start with you, Amisha. When you see this report and we realize how devastating it is no shock that Donald Trump and his administration doesn't give a damn about civil rights. And so when he stands up and says, black people, what do you have to lose? A hell of a whole lot.
No, I agree with you 100%. Nothing that was said previously was shocking at all. This administration, this president continues to ignore the fact that civil rights violations occur in this country. To be quite frank, he ignores the fact that civil rights violations ever really occurred in this country. And he is going about this in terms of not only rolling back Obama-era policies, but also policies that came out of the civil rights movement. So when you asked about which agencies are experiencing this at the highest level, I would definitely argue that we've seen them higher in terms of just the pushback and in terms of the American public reaction to it in HUD, and we've definitely seen it in the Department of Education. We've seen rollbacks in terms of the push against the school-to-prison pipeline. More students are being suspended and expelled based on the color of their skin, based on the fact that they are black boys and their black bodies are seen as dangerous, even though they're not doing anything in the classroom that any other student is not doing. We're seeing black girls being penalized because of their body type, being penalized because of their hair color. We're seeing people get kicked off of the rolls at HUD and nothing being done about that at all. So I think that this administration has gone about this process in a way that in large part has been swept under the rug. We're seeing hate crimes be ignored. We're seeing this administration not really pay attention to them. And it's by and large par for the course for a president who does not see discrimination against blacks, discrimination against LGBTQ individuals, discrimination against Latino individuals as wrong. And I think that as a nation, we need to come together and push against this.
Cleo, the reality is, I use the hashtag, we tried to tell you. Black folks tried to tell the rest of this country about this very issue when Donald Trump was elected. And so it is no shock to any of us that he and the folks we appointed don't give a damn about the civil rights of Americans.
Well, as you know, Roland, the purpose of the civil rights enforcement is to be a guiding force of safety for disenfranchised people. Disenfranchised in this country has typically meant people who aren't white. So obviously we expect people like Trump and his cabinet to not care about the civil rights issue. I think Ms. Lehman mentioned something about trying to get the Congress to step up more in resistance to this attempt to erase everything. And I'm just wondering, I haven't been fully informed here, and I'm wondering if Congress has been resistant, because this should have been fully expected. As you said, we tried to tell you, as I have said often, white supremacy is going to do what it can to marginalize everybody else and put itself in the center, which means taking away anybody's rights. That is fully expected, like it's expected for the ground to get wet when it rains. So my concern is, what is the preemptive factor here? What is the people in position to actually resist what Trump is doing? And she gave me the impression that not much is happening on the congressional side to prevent Trump from doing what he wants to do, and his cabinet. Because it's not just Trump. I want to reiterate that. People focus on Trump, but Trump has a whole bunch of other people that agree with him, including voters, white voters mostly, who support his racist perspective and activity.
Avis, bottom line is this here. It's not going to get better. Trump doesn't give a damn, doesn't care. We know for a fact that he started his whole career off getting slapped with housing discrimination complaints. And so, look, at the end of the day, Republicans in the Senate, they don't care. All they're focused on are confirming as many right-wing federal judges as possible who are going to be as hostile as civil rights to his administration.
Absolutely. So this is exactly why voting matters, right? I mean, nothing burns me up more than to hear people discount the importance of their vote and not really getting the link between why it's important, and also making the argument that there is no difference between the two parties. Clearly, the Democratic Party is not perfect. There are lots of things that we can complain about. But to say that there's no difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party is complete ignorance. And the reason why there is not anything that Congress is doing right now to be able to counteract the complete destruction of decades of civil rights work that had been put into place is because they can't. I mean, you have right now about 300 bills that have passed the democratically controlled House that's sitting in Mitch McConnell's graveyard in the Senate. He proudly calls it a graveyard. He does not want to pass anything that's coming out of the House. So no matter what they pass, no matter what fixes they can develop in the House, it's not going to move out of the Senate. And if by some miracle it were to move out of the Senate, we know good and well that Trump would not sign it, okay? And there would be no override of a veto, whatever, you know what I mean? So the challenge here is that we need to understand that we have the power to change this in 2020, and we need to be not lulled into complacency or fall for the okey-doke arguments that our voice doesn't matter, and therefore we should either throw away our vote or don't vote at all. That will put us in a situation where we will permanently put ourselves behind, because you have all the time, as you've been saying, the right stacking the courts at the federal level, stacking the court at the Supreme Court level, so that they can build in a permanent advantage no matter what happens to their representation in the population. I don't want to live under an apartheid system. And if you don't either, you need to get out and vote.
And that, Amisha, is what's critically important. I saw a video that Mitch McConnell released. I saw a video that he released today where he talked about that, where he made it perfectly clear. They're going to be advancing more conservative justices. He said they moved 2. They're going to move 8 this week. They are hell-bent on putting as many federal judges on the bench, and these people do not agree with civil rights, and they will be ruling against civil rights lawsuits and other actions for the next 50 years.
Absolutely, Roland. And I think that this is one of the things that voters, especially black voters and minority voters overall, need to really understand. In as much as Trump is made fun of because of what looks like a lack of strategy and all the craziness that comes out on Twitter, he is actually very strategic, and his administration is strategic in trying to make sure that they build a system across this country that supports white supremacy, that supports holding people back, that supports a certain elevated position for Caucasian individuals against all odds. And I think that by him choosing to do that and noting that if he has 4 years, if he has 8 years, whatever that is, him choosing these judges is going to make a change for generations. And I think that he is trying to really solidify that. That's probably one of the most strategic and honestly villainous but smart moves that he's made since he's been there, because he wants to make sure that his footprint is left on this country for years to come. And the only way he can do that is by ensuring that those like-minded judges are actually there, so that when these issues are challenged, at the end of the day, the person making that decision, those decisions that really matter, are the folks who he put in place.
But optics really matter a lot. And the reason I raise the issue of optics is because there are people, black people I'm talking about, who don't see enough outrage from Congress, from the Congressional Black Caucus, around these issues. So because they don't optically see any outrage, even against Trump's killing all of these civil rights bills, there's no, even though McConnell has a death, a graveyard or whatever, Congress still needs to make it a more demonstrative fact that they care about these issues, so the black community can see that they care about them. And then once the black community sees that they care about them, when they recommend the black community goes out and vote, the black community will be responsive and go out and vote. One of the things I've heard in my conversations with the community is that, for example, police brutality has been a problem even during the Obama administration. And now it's still a problem under the Trump administration. And there's been no resolution. So they feel like, well, none of y'all can respond properly to our issues, so we don't care what you say. What you say doesn't really matter because we don't see no on-the-ground evidence of your positions making a difference directly in our communities, so we're not voting.
But part of what Trump has done that is scary but also very maniacal is that he has operated the news cycle in a way...
One second. I got to deal with what Cleo just said. So, Cleo, when you say they don't see how the CBC is reacting, mainstream media ain't covering the CBC. And when you have 8 black cable networks that don't have 1 hour of news a week,
absolutely.
When this is the only national daily show that speaks to issues targeting African Americans, how will black people actually see it if nobody covers it?
Well, I know what you're saying is absolutely true. So we have to find alternative means, including supporting shows like yourself or creating other ones as well, to create a medium for the black voice or the black concerns, because you're right. They don't see it, and the other so-called black networks are just entertainment and not raising these issues. And this does trickle down into how black people behave when it comes to voting. Somehow somebody in a position to understand this needs to push back against the blind spot that's created around black issues, because it could help Trump get the presidency as we speak, and it could help him get back there again. We got to do something about this gap. And people in Congress do have other venues, radio shows, other things they can do to push the issue of turning back what Trump has done. There's not a powerful message getting to black people about the damage that Trump is doing. I'm telling you, it's not there.
Well, I agree. But the challenge, though, is the reason why it's so hard to get a clear message around the problem that Trump is creating is because he's creating so many damn problems. I mean, you just cannot keep up with it. Every day there are, this is not like a daily news cycle. This is like a moment by moment news cycle, and they're all crises. And so it's just really hard for people to really keep up with the volume of damage that he's doing. I agree that, generally speaking, Democrats writ large are horrible at messaging, are horrible at really making sure that people understand the issues in a consumable, bite-sized way that really gets not only at logic but emotion. Mm-hmm. And I agree that there needs to be a specific focus on those issues that concern the black community. And I wish that there were more opportunities. Honestly, this show is golden, but we need a million more like this. But the bottom line is, practically speaking, what's happening in this administration is unprecedented in terms of the level of destruction that he is causing in a short amount of time. Mm-hmm. When you say that there's nothing been done for police brutality, for example, what really happened is under the Obama administration, you had consent decrees put in that were rolled back basically almost like the first week that this administration was put into office. And it takes time for new policies to really take hold. So instead of people saying, well, under the Obama administration, nothing happened. No, that's not true. You had consent decrees that were put in place. They didn't have time to fully take hold. And the minute that this administration was won, they went immediately to starting to destroy all the consent decrees across the nation that were related to police brutality. So first of all, we need to understand what we're talking about before we spread misinformation, which unfortunately is happening a lot out there right now. And I also am concerned that a lot of people, quite frankly, are spreading misinformation on purpose, specifically to suppress the black vote. So I do hope that people take a look at the source of the information that they are getting before they just blindly accept everything that they hear as truth because they think it's coming from somebody black, because you don't know what their motivations are. You don't know how they're getting paid. You don't even know if they're black. Let's just get very real about it, because we ultimately knew in the last election there was a specific focus on the black population, flooding us with misinformation, flooding us with specific entities and that were created to make it look like it was black people talking to black people, but it was actually Russians talking to black people. So let's take a minute to assess the quality of the information before we take everything that we hear as truth. And do a little bit of research on your own to figure out if something makes sense or if it doesn't. Because a lot of things that continues to be floating around the internet, specifically targeting the Black population, is full of lies and misinformation.
But guess what, Avis? That flooding that you mentioned that I know is true has not been counter-flooded.
Exactly.
That's true.
And we need to do a counter flood. I mean, what you just got finished saying is absolutely true, and I know it's true. But most people that I run into, and I'm talking about a national audience of people, don't even realize this as a real issue. They think it's inconsequential. And we need to do some flooding too.
The other part is you don't have enough people that are counteracting the arguments.
That's
At the
right.
end of the day, we have a lot of Black people who right now are upset with the CBC because they don't know the hard work that the CBC is actually doing to push against some of this. Congresswoman Maxine Waters, for instance, has made herself very open and available. She has talked to this administration about exactly what's happening with HUD, what's happening in terms of people getting kicked off the rolls who are now going to be effectively homeless, people who are currently within that system who have homes who are going to be homeless within the next few months. We're watching the expansive amount of the homeless population in California. And what the president did was actually target her district and say, hey, there are homeless people within your own backyard. Yes, there are. But you know what the president is also doing and what Democrats did not push back with when he made those statements? The president of the United States has decided that he wants to incarcerate those homeless people. So when you are a part of the Democratic Party and you're seeing what this president is saying, you're seeing the arguments that he's making, you have to be willing and ready to have guns blazing and come back out here and push against them. When he says that more and more people are off of food stamps, this isn't a kudos moment. More and more people are off of food stamps because he cut the rolls, because he is changing food stamp office locations, because he's requiring you to bring in 4 and 5 types of different identification to actually qualify. Even though these people have not advanced in their employment, they're in no better place than they were 6-7 months ago, a year ago. Yes, the numbers are going down, but they're going down because people are getting penalized for the very thing that they need to survive. So until we are able to actually showcase exactly what this administration is doing and make it not look like a highlight point or an economic gain, then we're going to consistently be at a loss.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment. Saying that you talk about the hemp plant, the good cousin of marijuana, has a much higher concentration of hemp, which gives you all the medical benefits of marijuana without getting you high. Now, of course, hemp farming is now legal in the United States, and that is creating one of the largest commodities worldwide. So the folks at 420 Real Estate have this deal. What they want to do is buy the land and then license to high-paying tenants. And that's right, they will simply be landlords. And so it's all about understanding the economic landscape, and that's what 420 wants to do. And so what they offer is an opportunity for you to be able to join this crowdfunding campaign for as little as $200 up to $10,000. $200 up to $10,000. That's the minimum investment. If you want more information, go to marijuanastock.org. That's marijuanastock.org. What it will take you to is to a crowdfunding page that will then explain to you all that is involved. So we certainly appreciate 420 Real Estate being a partner here on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Now back to your Roland Martin Unfiltered video.